right. Everybody send out a notice. Okay, we got the guitar. Hey, what are we going to chant? Okay. Uranga Balite Habe. Mulakasharir Adiyane Mulite Nayane Mabir Goran Mulite Mulakasharir Adiyane Mulite Nayane Corona, hoive, samsara pashana, oragabe, jujalibe. Arakabe netai janera, Corona, hoive, samsara pashana, oragabe, should I be mana kapia maira posri Vrindavana Vishaya Jati should I be mana kapia maira posri Hoy ve a corte, cabe amamos ya você, you calamity. Rupa hoy ve a corte, cabe amamos ya você. Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Prabhupada. Jai Om Vishnu Pad Paramahansa Parabhagacharya also Teta Satashi Shimad, His Divine Grace Abhaya Chaitanya Bhaktivedanta Goswami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Anandakoti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Shri Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shidwaita Gadadha Shivasati Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radhakrishna Gopi Gopinath Swayam Kunda Radhakunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Vrindavanam Ki Jai. Maturnam Ki Jai. Jagadada Sami Ki Jai. Yamunamai Ki Jai. Shrimati Galasi Devi Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Gaur Premananda Hari Hari Bol. All glory is the assembled devotees. All glory is the assembled devotees. All glory is the assembled devotees. All glory is to Shri Guru and Gauranga Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Namani Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharni Nivashesha Shanyavadi Paschacha Dejatarni. We read the translation. When will that opportune moment come to me when I shiver upon chanting the name of Lord Gauranga? When will I cry while chanting Hare Krishna? When will I receive the causeless mercy of Lord Nityananda so that my desires for material enjoyment become insignificant? When will my mind be purified of material anxieties and desires so that I can understand Vrindavana? When shall I be very eager to study the books by the 6 Goswamis so that I can understand the conjugal love of Radha and Krishna? The lotus feet of the 6 Goswamis are my only shelter. In constant separation from them, I remain Narottama Das. Narottama Das Thakur Ki Jai. So, let us continue with our study of the Jaiva Dharma. Very interesting and a philosophical part of the Jaiva Dharma that we're studying. Of course, Jaiva Dharma is the book by Bhaktivinoda Thakur, one of the 2 books that is Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada considered the most important books of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. There's Jaiva Dharma and Chaitanya Shikshamrita. So let's go and share the screen. So Om Gana Timiranda Shah Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of my spiritual master, His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, who so kindly opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge while I was blinded in the darkness of ignorance. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. So, let us share the screen. And let's see, where is that screen? Hold on a second. It's down there somewhere. Hold on a second. Oh, there. Let me just... It's there somewhere. Let me find it. I have so many screens open. Here it is. Okay, there's Jaiva Dharma, right where we left off yesterday. Let's just get this set up. Okay, so yesterday we heard these different terms like nitya karma, okay, nai mi tika karma, and kamya karma. Okay, oh my God. So let's define them so you remember what we're talking about. So this word nitya karma can be understood in two different ways according to the context. One way we can understand it is when one is doing, let's say, mode of goodness activities in this material world, like the brahmanas doing their sanjas, sanja vadanam, which means they do their prayers at the 3 times of the day, morning, noon, and evening, sunset, for the purpose of spiritual advancement. So that's one way that nitya karma is explained. However, that's not to be taken literally because it's figurative. But the literal meaning of nitya karma is devotional activities performed, which, and you see in the preceding paragraph, that nitya karma is described as prema. So that's the two different definitions of nitya karma. The same thing as naimittika karma, because nitya karma means activities that are part of your regular function that you do every day, like the brahmana sanjas. Naimittika karma means activities that you don't always do, like someone's funeral ceremony, but if you're doing them for a higher spiritual purpose, they're considered naimittika karma. In other words, in the process of Krishna consciousness. And kamya karma are activities that you really desire to do, but you don't have to do. And they're not really spiritual, unless you desire spirituality. So that's a definition of those different terms. Nitya karma, naimittika karma, and kamya karma. So let's continue. Considering the facts, the pure spiritual cultivation is the jiva's nitya dharma. So there's the word nitya dharma, eternal dharma. So all other dharmas are naimittika. Naimittika means basically they're temporary. And ultimately they're meant to be given up. Varnashram, Ashtanga Yoga, Sankhya Yoga, Jnana, and austerity. Okay, so Varnashram means the breakup of society into the Brahmin, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudras, and also Brahmacharyas, Grahastha, Vanaprastha, Sannyas, the eightfold system. Ashtanga Yoga is the physical yoga system. Ashtanga means the eightfold system, like yam, restrictions, niyam, positive injunctions, asana, sitting in a certain position, pranayam, breathing in one nostril out another, pranayam, and then asakti, dhyana, jhana, and samadhi. So anyway, that's eightfold system. And Sankhya Jnana means the analysis of the material elements in order to understand your real nature. And austerity means austerity. If the jiva had not been bound up, all these dharmas would not be necessary. In other words, unless the reason that we're in Maya, or the reason that we may do these, is because we're bound by the illusory energy. The jiva's bewilderment in Maya by being bound up is the only cause, nimitta. It's the only cause of having to do Ashtanga Yoga, Sankhya Yoga, austerity, or Varnashram. All dharmas arising from this incident have become dharma, but from the absolute point of view, they are all naimittika. In other words, temporary. dharmas, not the eternal dharma of the soul. The excellent position of the Brahmana, karmas like Sanja Vandana, and accepting sannyas while giving up karmas are all Naimitika dharmas. So, in other words, this is interesting. Previously, the Brahmana's Sanja Vandana practice was called Nitya Dharma, but that's only because they're always done. But in the absolute sense, these activities, like the Sanja Vandana, are Naimitika, temporary Dharma. All these activities are excellent according to Dharma Shastras and are recommended according to qualification. However, in comparison to Nitya Karma, eternal spiritual activities, they are not respected. However, but they may help one come to the point of Nitya Karma and Nitya Dharma. In other words, there may be stepping stones if you're on a lower platform. So we're not saying you reject these things. They can be useful under certain circumstances. That's why they're called Naimitika Dharma. Okay. So here's a verse from the Bhagavatam. Vipradvi Shadguna Yutad Aravinda Naba Padaravinda Vimukat Srapacham Varishtam Manye Terapitomana Vachane Hitarata Pranam Punati Swakulam Natu Buri Mannaha. I consider a dog eater who has dedicated everything, mind, words, activities, wealth, and life to the Supreme Lord superior to a Brahmana who has 12 items of the previous verse, but who's adverse to the lotus feet of the Lord. He purifies his whole family, whereas the so-called respectable person does not. That's from the Bhagavatam, 7th Canto, 9th chapter, text 10. In other words, it doesn't matter what someone's caste or varna or ashram is, as long as one is dedicating everything to the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That's superior to any sort of ritualistic position. The qualities of a Brahman are truthfulness, sense control, austerity, lack of dissatisfaction, tolerance, lack of envy, yajna, charity, determination, hearing the Vedas, and vratas. These are the qualities of a Brahman. Brahman must be truthful, control the senses, always be satisfied. That's a positive lack of dissatisfaction. Tolerate in all circumstances. Not be envious. And perform sacrifices, different types of sacrifices, because we do the sacrifice of the holy names. Give in charity, be determined, regularly hearing the Vedas, and doing vows. That's what a vrata is. A Brahman endowed with these 12 qualities is to be worshipped in this world. But if a Brahman is endowed with the 12 qualities and is devoid of bhakti to Krishna, then superior to such a Brahmana is a devotee who is a Chandala. The conclusion is that by taking birth in a Chandala family purified by devotee association, and then cultivating one's eternal dharma, the jiva becomes superior to a Brahman born in a Brahman family, fixed in Naimitika dharma but devoid of cultivating Nitya dharma. Everybody understands that? I hope so. So, it doesn't matter what one's family is. Chandala means, really outcast family. But if one becomes a devotee, Muchi Hoy, Shuchi Hoy, Krishna Bhaji. So if one worships Krishna, it doesn't matter whether one is a Muchi or a Suchi. Yadi Krishna Bhaji. If one worships Krishna, then one is actually considered an elevated person. And if one doesn't worship Krishna, one may be materially elevated due to this temporary dharma, which the Brahmana's temporary dharma is better than the Chandala's temporary dharma or adharma. But the Brahmana's temporary dharma is not superior to the Chandala's Nitya dharma. Hope that makes sense. In the world, there are two types of people: those who have developed discernment and those who have not developed discernment. I mean, discernment. Basically, the discernment means the ability to discriminate between matter and spirit. Okay? Those who have not developed discernment are generally fully engaged in samsara. That means repeated birth and death and materialistic activities. Those who have developed discernment are rare. For those who have not developed discernment, this is interesting, the Brahmana is the best. For those who have not developed discernment, that means the ability to discriminate between matter, the Brahmana is the best. This ritualistic Brahmana, not a Brahmana who knows Brahman, is the best. And Nitya karmas like Sanja Vandana. So this is interesting. This word Nitya karma is now used in a different way in this particular context to mean activities that are supposed to always be performed. Okay? Nitya karma, activities are supposed to be performed. Whereas in the other context, Nitya karma can mean activities that are meant for pleasing Krishna. So, again, I reiterate that this word Nitya karma, or the word Nitya, can be used or understood in different ways according to the context. So the best, and the Nitya karma is like Sanja Vadana, that means the 3 times of the day of the prayers, etc., to be performed by this Varna are the best among all activities. Those who have developed discernment are called Vaishnavas. In other words, those who have discrimination are called Vaishnavas. The activities of the Vaishnava and those of persons without discernment are necessarily different. Though different, the activities of the Vaishnava are not contrary to the conclusions prescribed by the Smartas for regulating persons who have not developed discernment. So in other words, the regulations prescribed for people on a lower platform are ultimately meant to help them come to the platform of developing discernment, or being a Vaishnava, which is the same thing. So, therefore, they're not contrary, the activities of the Vaishnava are not contrary to the conclusion or the reason or the purpose that there's these smarta regulations. The conclusion of scriptures is only one. Those who have not developed discernment, discrimination between matter and spirit, are painfully bound to one portion of literal statements in the scriptures. Those who have developed discernment accept the conclusion of the scriptures as if the scriptures were friends. Even having different actions does not mean a different conclusion. So let me unpack that. So, because to achieve a particular goal, there may be different instructions for people who are on different stages of achieving that goal. For example, for one person, the action prescribed may be do some yoga postures, Prabhu. And for another person, the action prescribed may be chant Hare Krishna. Of course, ultimately, the person doing yoga postures has to come to the place of chanting Hare Krishna, but he's not ready right now, perhaps. For unqualified persons, it appears that the conduct of persons with developed discernment is contrary to ordinary behavior. But they're on a higher level. They don't have to perform those secondary or preliminary activities. Like I don't have to go to grade school. I don't have to study mathematics. Like that. But actually there's one basic conclusion even of this different behavior. The conclusion is the same. The purpose is the same. The goal is the same. Got it? In the eyes of persons who have developed discernment, Vaishnavas, Naimitika Dharma should be taught only to ordinary people, but actually Naimitika Dharma is incomplete, mixed with inferior elements, and is temporary. That is why Prabhupada at certain points talked about Varnashram Dharma, which is Naimittika Dharma. It's only meant for this world. But instituting it, even connected with the Krishna conscious movement, why? Because he saw that many people could not come to the level of being fixed in their Vaishnava principles and practices. So there's a fallback position, and that fallback position is Naimittika Dharma, which is better than nothing. So Naimittika Dharma is not direct cultivation of the spiritual, certainly Varnashram is not. Accepting material cultivation with the aim of spiritual cultivation, Naimittika Dharma is a means for attaining the end, which is spiritual cultivation. So in other words, it's done temporarily to come to the spiritual platform. When the end is attained, the means is given up. So in other words, you don't have to follow Varnashram when you actually become Krishna conscious. Thus, the means itself is never complete. It is not the end product. It is the end product in a broken form. So because it leads to the end product, you talk about the end product in a broken form. That's why we find we find people born even in Shudra families like Narottam Das Thakur acting as gurus. Why? Because you reject the secondary injunctions, such as the Manusmriti, which states that one should be born in a Brahmin family to be a guru. Thus, Naimittika Dharma is never complete. It's not thrown out, but it's not complete. It's imperfect, but it's useful under certain circumstances. Here's an example. The Sanja Vandana, that's the prayers of the 3 times of the day, of the Brahmana, like many karmas activities, is temporary and performed by rules. These activities do not arise from natural tendencies, not the nature of the soul. Performing these actions according to rules for a long time, when a taste for the name spiritual cultivation appears by impressions of the devotee's association, Sanja Vandana, etc., do not remain in the form of karma. The name of the Lord is complete spiritual cultivation. Sanja, Vandana, etc. are only a means to attain this main goal. In such acts, the complete absorption absolute does not exist. So it's only a means, a stepping stone. But it should be recommended for certain people. Though Naimittika Dharma is respected since its goal is spiritual, it's a stepping stone to the spiritual platform. It is mixed with rejectable elements. The spiritual object is the end. In other words, it has to be rejected before you can achieve spiritual association. Matter and material association are inferior elements for the jiva. Naimittika Dharma has some very material elements. It has intermediate material results. Moreover, on performing the acts of Naimittika Dharma, the jiva cannot avoid its meager results. You get some temporary results. The Brahmana's worship of the Lord is good, but it produces the rejectable result in which the Brahmana, from false pride, thinks that others are inferior to him. In other words, there's the result, not the main result, but what's called byproduct. Power is vibhuti. Vibhutis from performing Ashtanga Yoga are a detestable end which produces great inauspiciousness for the jiva. So when you perform Ashtanga Yoga, which is a Naimittika Dharma, you can get powers like make yourself lighter than the lightest, heavier than the heaviest, able to travel places just by desiring, all sorts of mystic powers. Then it creates an attraction for the powers, and therefore you become diverted from your spiritual path. Material enjoyment and liberation are 2 unavoidable assistants of Naimittika Dharma. Now, it may be necessary to do Naimittika Dharma if one's not on the spiritual platform. However, it's a fallback position, but there's impediments. There's attractions to this Naimittika Dharma. If the jiva can save himself from these two, he can carry out spiritual cultivation, which is the main goal. Thus, in Naimittika Dharma, there are rejectable parts as far as the jiva is concerned. In other words, dangerous. Dangerous even on the royal road. Danger on the royal road. Actually, it's an interesting point. Let's just see. Okay. Naimittika Dharma. Now, this part is very philosophical, so bear with me. But there's important concepts to understand. Naimittika Dharma is temporary. It does not remain with the jiva in all conditions at all times. For instance, the Brahmana has Brahmana's Dharma, the Kshatriya has Kshatriya's Dharma, and etc. Naimittika Dharma disappears when its cause is finished. When you change your body. When a person, this is what Bhaktivinoda Thakur is talking about here. When a person born as a Brahmana becomes born as a Chandala, his Swadharma is no longer the Naimittika Dharma rising from Brahman Varna. The word Swadharma, one's innate Dharma, here is figurative, since it's not the eternal Dharma. In other words, this word Swadharma usually means that you're eternal servant of Krishna in a literal sense, but in a figurative sense, it refers to your Dharma in the embodied state. So that word Swadharma, it can be understood like the word Nitya Dharma or Nitya Karma in different contexts. Swa means one's own. Birth after birth, the jiva's Swadharma, that's the figurative Swadharma, changes, but no birth does his Nitya Dharma change. His actual Nitya Dharma. Nitya Dharma is actually the jiva's Swadharma. So here's the word Swadharma used in meaning two different things in one sentence after the other. He says here, birth after birth, the jiva's Swadharma changes. That's his bodily Swadharma, just to make it more clear. And no birth is, and then it says Nitya Dharma is actually the jiva's Swadharma. That's the literal meaning. The figurative meaning refers only to the bodily duties or the body identification. Naimittika Dharma is temporary. But then, if one asks, what is Vaishnava Dharma? That Dharma is the Jiva's Nitya Dharma, obviously. The Vaishnava Jiva, when liberated from matter, cultivates Krishna Prema and his pure spiritual form. In the state of material bondage, after developing discernment, he accepts with respect all items favorable for spiritual cultivation. In the state of material bondage, after developing discernment, in other words, you have some discrimination between matter and spirit, then you accept things favorable for spiritual cultivation among material objects and relations and rejects everything unfavorable. Those are Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's two surrendering principles. Accept everything favorable, reject everything unfavorable for advancement in devotional service. So even in the beginning stage, once we can understand the difference between matter and spirit by Srila Prabhupada's mercy, then we reject and accept things based upon what's conducive for spiritual advancement. He does not perform actions under the control and rules and prohibitions of Scripture. Because as I mentioned before, there's different shlokas or different injunctions for people in different modes of nature, different situations in Scripture. So you have to not follow certain scriptural injunctions just to be practical, or to speak of making spiritual advancement. But you have to know which ones are applicable for you at your particular stage of advancement. Therefore, we need the association of devotees and Srila Prabhupada's guidance. When a rule is favorable to worshiping the Lord, he respects it. When a rule is unfavorable, he does not respect it. Well, so if the rule is that Chandala, or someone born in a family where there's been meat eating, cannot worship the deity, we don't listen to that rule because it's not favorable. If the rule is that someone must be born in the Brahmin family to be a guru, we reject that rule, even though that rule is there in the Shastras. But it's there in terms of Naimitika Dharma. For those who are not on the path, or those run way back before they get to the path. It may be helpful for them. That's true. It may be helpful. Like the rule that if you want to eat meat, you offer to the goddess Kali once a month on the full moon day. That's helpful for people who are just going to go and eat meat anyway. So instead of being unregulated and open up slaughterhouses or going to the supermarket to buy meat, they're doing it in a way that eventually will bring them to a higher platform. That's all. But we don't follow that rule. We don't follow the rule that, offer the goddess Kali a goat once a month. I'm not going to do that. Why should I do that? I'm not going to do that. I mean, there's a lot of secondary rules we don't follow. Like Arjuna, in the beginning of the Bhagavad Gita, he was stressing secondary rules, right? What were the secondary rules? We don't want to kill these people because that will create unwanted progeny in society because the women won't be protected, which is true. It's not false. But, the highest rule is to do what Krishna wants. There's a purpose. So the Vaishnava deals with the prohibitions in the same way. Vaishnava is the highest object in the world. He is a friend of the world. He is auspiciousness for the world. Today in the assembly of Vaishnavas, I have spoken what should be explained to you in a humble mood. May the devotees excuse all my faults. So this is Vaishnava Das speaking, who was previously a Mayavadi sannyasi, but had recently become converted by the mercy of the Vaishnavas. And there's the story, we heard about that before, that Vaishnava Das, he had this vision, and the vision convinced him, increased his faith, and convinced him. Therefore, he changed his dress from the normal Mayavad sannyas dress to the Vaishnava dress, and got the name and initiation from his guru, Babaji. Saying this, when Vaishnava Das offered full respects to the assembled devotees and sat on one side, the devotees' eyes flowed with tears. All exclaimed at once, "Excellent, excellent." From the four directions, the sound echoed in the bower of Godruma. The inquisitive Brahmana singer could see the profound truth in that analysis in many places, but he had some doubts in some places. In any case, the seed of faith in Vaishnava Dharma sprouted deeply in his mind. With folded hands he said, "O great souls, I am not a Vaishnava, but have become a semi-Vaishnava, Vaishnava Praya, on hearing the name of the Lord. If you mercifully give me instruction, my many doubts will be dissipated." So in those days, if someone was convinced through, elaborate philosophical discussion, then that person would surrender, and this is what he's doing. Nowadays, if someone, of course, people aren't convinced, but if someone loses an argument, they still go on arguing, and they don't accept that they've lost. So he is actually a humble person. So Premadas spoke with compassion, giving instruction to this person. He said, "You should associate with Vaishnava Das from time to time. He is learned in all scriptures. Having studied Vedanta deeply, he took sannyas and resided in Varanasi. Krishna Chaitanya, the Lord of our lives, has shown him unlimited mercy and attracted him to Navadvip. He has completely understood Vaishnava conclusions. He has developed a deep attraction to the holy name." The name of the inquisitive Brahmin was Kali Das Lakiri. Hearing the words of Babaji, he accepted Vaishnava Das as his guru in his mind. he thought as follows. One interesting thing you'll see here in the Jaiva Dharma, there's several generations of gurus acting together in harmony. Like Vaishnava Das has disciples, and Vaishnava Das's guru who's there, he has disciples. And you'll see several generations, and they're all acting cooperatively. He thought as follows. This person was born in a Brahmin family and accepted the sannyas ashram. Therefore, he is suitable to instruct a Brahmin. So this Lahiri Mahasai, or Kalidas Lahiri, he had some pride, so he was more likely to accept instruction because he was a Brahmin. He was more likely to accept instruction from someone born in a Brahmin family, thinking he still had that contamination of thinking that Varnashram was important. He has expertly understood Vaishnava conclusions. I will be able to understand many topics of Vaishnava Dharma from him. Thinking this way, Lahiri offered respects to Vaishnava Das's feet and said, "Dear sir, be merciful to me." Now here, Vaishnava Das offered him respects and said, "If you give me mercy, I will be successful." This is humility. Amanina manadena. The evening had almost arrived, and at that time everyone went to their places. Vaishnava Das remained at Prajuna Kunja. Lahiri went to his own place. His place was a secluded place in the village. This is an interesting story. There was a grove, and in the center was a Madhavi bower and a platform for Tulsi. On two sides there were two huts. The courtyard was surrounded by chitta plants. There were beautiful bela and nim trees and fruiting and flowering trees. The owner of the bower was Madhava Das Babaji. He was good at first, but by bad association, so Madhava Das Babaji, who Lahiri was renting his place from, was good at first, but by bad association, the excellent qualities of Vaishnava disappeared in him. By the fault of association of women, Madhava Das became contaminated and his worship decreased. Because of lack of money, he could not meet expenses properly. He begged in various places and rented one of his huts. In that hut, Lahiri lived. At midnight, Lahiri's sleep was broken. He had been deliberating in his mind on the core meaning of Vaishnava Das's speech. In the yard there was a sound. Going outside, he saw that Madhava Das was standing in the yard with a woman and talking to her. On seeing Lahiri, the woman vanished. Madhava Das was embarrassed in front of Lahiri and stood there in silence. Lahiri said, "Babaji, what is this?" So Madhava Das was caught in the act. Madhava Das, with tears in his eyes, said, "What fate? What can I say? What I was and what I have become. Premadas had faith in me. Now I'm ashamed to come before him." That's Premadas Babaji. Lahiri said, "If you clearly explain, I will understand." Madhava Das said, "The woman you saw was my wife from my household life. When I took Babaji dress, she came to Shantipur after some days and then built a hut and lived on the bank of the Ganga. Many days passed. I went to Shantipur and saw her on the bank of the Ganga, and I said, 'Why did you give up your house?' She told me that she no longer was attracted to material life and desiring to serve my feet was living at a tirtha. She would survive by learning to beg. Not saying anything, I returned to Godruma. Then she came to Godruma." She was going after him, "and stayed at a coward's house. I saw her at various places every day. As much as I desired to free myself from her grasp, she made her grasp tighter. She's built an ashram here. She comes late at night and tries to destroy me. My infamy is broadcast everywhere. In her association, my bhajan has decreased. I'm a black spot on the servants of Krishna Chaitanya. After the punishment of Chota Haridas, I'm the only person deserving such punishment. The Babajis of Godruma, being merciful, do not punish me, but have no faith in me." So in other words, there's no problem with his wife, but basically he broke his vow. That's the point. So Babajis have very strict vows. Hearing this, Lahiri said, "Oh, Madhava Das Babaji, from now on you must be careful." Saying this, he entered his hut. Madhava Das sat in his place. Lahiri did not sleep. He was thinking, Madhavadas has fallen down. I should not stay here. Though I have not had bad association, people will criticize me. The pure devotees will not instruct me with faith. Early in the morning, he came to Prajuna Kund and greeted Vaishnavadas. He wanted a place to stay there. Vaishnavadas informed Paramahamsa Babaji, who ordered him to keep Lahiri in one hut at the side of his bower. From that time, Lahiri lived in that hut and made arrangements to receive prasad from a nearby Brahmin. So I think time is good to end chapter 3, and tomorrow we begin chapter 4. So, interesting story at the end here. How this Lahiri Das became convinced with Vaishnava Das's explanation of Nitya Dharma, Naimittika Dharma, and Kamya Karma, and understood where a Brahmana's Sanja Vandana is in this particular designation or explanation. So, with that in mind, we will stop sharing and allow everybody to ask questions. Let me just unmute. Okay, you are allowed to unmute yourselves if you wish, so you can either raise your hand to ask a question, or you can, or you can type in the text window, or you can unmute yourself. So I know there's some complicated things today. Okay, Rakesh, you have a question.
Gurudev, please accept my humble obeisances. I have a very similar question what Madhavadas Babaji was facing. Like, after getting so many instructions on the association with women, if a person finds still that, let's say the person has opportunity, and let's say the person is suffering from this anartha, that the lust is just not going outside the heart. Instead of associating, he's thinking about it, and it's just a hit and miss. Like like, what should a person do? Like, he has been given instructions, what is right, what is not, but the mind keeps on playing, and it really agitates the sadhana, and the bhajan goes down. That is true. So what should a person do? Like, I'm not talking about Madhav, I'm just talking about in day to day. Like, what about me? What should I do? Like, it's all because I go to the university, I go to workplace, and it's very close encounter. Like, it's not that I am asking; they give their numbers, and they want to go, like, the cold work party.
But you haven't taken any vows yet. You haven't taken any vows.
But my sadhana is going down. It's not about the wow
It's
form.
going
The
down.
taste I have is going down.
You always have to keep the chanting of Hare Krishna in your mind.
I tell you, it's really a struggle. It's really a struggle.
I know. But
either they are more cunning or I am not keeping up with it.
As soon as you wait a second, as soon as you see Maya, the potential for Maya, you just start chanting in your minds, and that will keep your mind pure, in spite of having a bad association or being in a situation which is dangerous. You chant in your mind, and that'll keep you pure in every circumstance. That's the only solution. The holy names are our only solution, because sometimes we may find ourselves in certain circumstances that may not be 100% appropriate to be in. But if we chant in our minds will not get attracted to those circumstances. The holy names are our protection from the allurement of Krishna's illusory energy. So, obviously we have to follow too. If one breaks their vows, it's actually quite sinful. Prabhupada said one who breaks a vow is not a gentleman, what to speak of a devotee. So one has to keep their vows. What can I say? If they don't keep their vows, then what can I say? They're not a gentleman or a gentle lady. And so, this particular Babaji, he didn't keep his vow, and therefore, his association was rejected. Okay, let's go on to someone else. I think we have Gopal raised his hand a second ago, and I just saw it disappear. You had a question, Mr. Gopal? I guess not.
No, Gurudev. Thank you.
Okay, so what's your question?
Well, actually, I was thinking about you were saying that if a particular injunction comes, uh, like Malacha or Chandala can't worship the deity, but we reject it because we have discernment or we're following a higher dharma, Vaishnava dharma.
Yeah.
But we also see the example of like Haridas Thakur and Sanatana Goswami. They refused to go into the Jagannath temple because they understood the time, place, and circumstance of the culture there. So they accepted, at least externally, that Namitika Dharma so that they wouldn't create a disturbance in society. And also, such a Dharma, doesn't it help us cultivate humility to a certain degree?
That's an interesting point. Now, let's talk about two things that you mentioned. One is that they respect because they didn't want to create a disturbance in general society, not because of Vaishnav society. It was because of general society. You know, like the Pandas and the ritualistic Brahmanas. It would have created like a ruckus. Although you did have Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, who was a revolutionary, create a ruckus in normal Brahminical society. In fact, there were attempts on his life, and when he and his disciples went around the holy places, they were stoning them or closed all the stores so they couldn't buy any of the necessities. So Haridas Thakur was not a revolutionary. That was not his dharma to create a revolution and a new movement in society like that. Whereas Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur was, because he had that purpose. And so, that's the first answer your question like that. Obviously, if it creates a riot, like if I was to push my way into the Jagannath temple, it might create a riot there. They might beat me up. In fact, one of my godbrothers went into the Jagannath temple and they caught him the second time he went in. And they were running after him with sticks to beat him up. So whether that's appropriate or not is another thing. The second part of your question is, it doesn't it create humility to think of yourself in terms of, yes, can create humility if you think of yourselves in terms of your past karma, in terms of your past situation. But what supersedes that is the order of the spiritual master and the service to the supreme personality of Godhead. One may consider himself like Srila Rupa Goswami. They consider themselves. Whoops. Okay. Rupa Goswami, they consider themselves very fallen. However, their service was given, so that transcended that consideration. So one has to balance these things. Yes, it's a fact that actually you can think, oh, I was born in the darkness of ignorance. It's like we have this prayer that I was born in the dark. Om Ganad Timirandasha Gananjana Shlakya Chakshur Meditam Yena Tasmai Shigurveda Maha. It's born in the darkness of ignorance, but by the mercy of my spiritual master, I've been given this Krishna consciousness. My eyes opened with a torchlight of knowledge while I was born in the darkness of ignorance. So yes, we cultivate that humility, but the service transcends. I wouldn't say it transcends humility, but it transcends the injunction not to do something like that. Just like it just transcends it. If I say that because I was born in a Malecha family or a family where there was eating meat, I'm not going to preach Krishna consciousness. I'm not going to do deity worship. I'm just going to stand outside the temple and beg. I'm not even going to go see the deities. That I think that would be really counterproductive to what Prabhupada wanted. So, but it's a good question anyway. So therefore, one has to consider whether to transcend ordinary social mores in terms of service to Krishna. How about that?
So
In terms of
it seems to me what you're saying is the safest attitude is actually all the service I'm doing, I'm not qualified to do it. But because my
yes,
spiritual master has ordered me to do it, I'm doing it anyway, in spite of my lack
that's,
of qualification.
that's right. That's right. Service, service transcends even ordinary etiquette if it's ordered by the spiritual master. So, all right. So,
Thank you, Guru.
Nalini Kant has a question. Let's see. Well, reading or hearing Nitya karma, Naimittika karma, Kamya karma can overlap based on intention. Although external activity may look like Nitya, literal, not spiritual one, Naimittika and Kamya. Sometimes externally, sometimes it may appear that Kamya karma, but actually, yes. Sometimes to the observer, it may appear that the Vaishnava is just trying to fulfill his desires by his activities, but he's actually acting according to Krishna's desire. But as per Abhichet Siraja, no, don't try to play that verse. Abhichet Siraja, despite of the most abominable action, abominable means, the karmic activities. Vaishnavas don't do the karmic activities. Now, sometimes I was just thinking, as I said that, you may have someone who's completely transcendental, like Vamsi Das Babaji, who it appears that he was crazy in some of the things he did, but actually everything he did was completely transcendental. So that's like in a completely different Avaduta platform that we don't have to worry about. But in regular circumstances, uh, we don't apply that verse 930 in Bhagavad Gita. Apichet Surat Shro Bhajatayanan Nibak, that my devotees consider saying in spite of the most abominable action. That verse is applicable for those who have an accidental deviation, not a premeditated deviation. Okay, good questions. All right, so it's time to end. Thank you all for joining us. And tomorrow is the Sunday program here. We may not do Jaiva Dharma tomorrow, or I may do it as part of the Sunday program, which I'm not sure what I'll do. But it'll be the Sunday feast. It's supposed to be lecture, Sunday open house lecture, the love feast. So we will see what we speak about, but it'll be the same time tomorrow. Okay, on that happy note, see you later. All glories to His Divine Grace. A.C.